Welcome to the Radical Responsibility Revolution podcast. This is where we are transforming lives, inspiring you to reclaim your health, your wealth, and the power of your mind. Here we share actionable insights, inviting you to turn inwards and design your life of purpose and abundance. So welcome back to another episode of Radical Responsibility Revolution. And today's conversation is one of those that will linger in your body long after it ends. My guest, Sara Caso Perez, is a mother, a woman of deep faith, and a truth teller whose life was forever transformed by her son, Julian. He's known for many as Super Jules, and she'll tell us why. Sara's story isn't just about grief, it's about choice. It's about joy in the face of unbearable pain. It's about community and courage and the quiet power of deciding how you will meet life when it breaks your heart wide open. After losing Julian to bone cancer at just 17, Sara didn't disappear into darkness. Instead, she allowed herself to be alchemized by love, by faith, and by the wisdom her son modeled with extraordinary grace. This is a conversation about resilience redefined, about refusing victimhood without bypassing pain, about choosing life again and again, even when it would be easier not to. If you are a mother, because this is a very deep topic we're talking about, and if you're grieving, if you are standing in a what the hell just happened moment of your own life, this conversation is for you and you definitely want to lean in. So, Sara, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today, you and Super Jules, who we'll talk about in just a second. But I want to start here with that idea before all of the labels, before the Super Jules. Who was Julian to you as a soul? Because this is where your story starts, but he is a soul energy, as are you. And that is where we start your story. How did you observe him as a soul before all of the diagnosis and all the things that transpired?
Well, and thank you, Debbie, for having me, because any opportunity to talk about my Julian is just the sunshine in my day. I've been looking forward to this. I can't even tell you since we first met. Julian was my firstborn. And like all firstborns, all our dreams, everything, our expectations, everything is rolled up into that first child. When he was born, he was perfect. He grew into such a happy child. We all enjoyed him. He was also the first grandchild. He was the first nephew. So our experience with Julian from the very beginning was a party. It was just a lot of joy. And he had that about him. He loved his friends. He had a little girlfriend since preschool. He was just always such a light, unperturbed. That was Julian. Julian early on showed us some signs that we're concerned with. He had lacked a little bit of eye contact. He was delayed in speaking, and he eventually received the diagnosis that he was on the spectrum, on the autistic spectrum. And when he received this diagnosis, it was very confusing for us because in our family, we did not have anyone diagnosed with this. And he was such a happy child other ways. But it did start becoming more apparent as school progressed that there were little delays, and it was incredibly popular. So again, socially, so happy, a little awkward, a little quirky, but still a happy child, undeterred of whether he had a label or not, unaware of his awkwardness or his quirkiness. And he was just an absolute joy to have around, except for that constant worry that I always had inside of me. Will he go to college? Will he have a girlfriend? Will he be accepted? All these things that as mothers we have for all our children. But when your child receives a diagnosis or a label, we're always with that, what about the future? So Julie and I were attached by the hip because I was so overprotective, because he had his disability. And so he was like my partner in crime. And I think also because he had the autism, he never really developed any of that stuff teenagers get where like their mothers annoy them. he was amazing with me. He would love me, he would hug me, he would kiss me. Every morning he would wake up and say, Mom, what are we going to do today? I want to do everything. He wanted to do everything, Debbie, and he really did. I mean, if I think I took this kid bungee diving, he goes, Mom, let's go bungee diving. But it was with Mom. Mom, let's go do this. Mom, let's go see our friends. It wasn't that he wanted me left. He was that kind of kid. He was so much fun. And so Julian, by 16, he was had gone through puberty. He was tall, broad shoulders, messy, dirty brown hair, very athletic. His school had a program for children on the autistic spectrum. So he played football, he played baseball, he played basketball. He loved contact sports. So he was a little bit of an animal. He would tackle and wrestle and get in trouble all the time for being overtly aggressive. He loved superhero movies, he loved comics, he loved music, and he loved girls. And that was Julian, just a typical 16-year-old boy, full of life, full of promise, great big brother, a wonderful son. And things seemed to be going well because he was really developing in ways that we had not predicted and doing so much better than we had even been told by the physicians. Because even at one point, they told us he wouldn't be verbal. And Debbie, he was verbal. He would not stop talking. That kid could talk all day long. And so that's Julian in a nutshell.
So I think it's really interesting though, because you've said a couple of things. Somebody diagnosed him, somebody in the medical profession, and then
Mm-hmm.
you walk around as the mom with the
Mm-hmm.
idea of that label in your consciousness. And so
Yeah.
just from that aspect, because we'll get into the rest of the story, but from that aspect, what would you share with moms that get these diagnoses that they're not the true essence of your child? Because you saw that unfold in a very beautiful way. That all the things that the doctors say, I'm not a big fan of doctors, but they don't know everything. And our
No.
souls do. So, that what is the best wisdom that you can share with a mom who may be going through this initial diagnosis right now to not put that label on their children or yourself, and how to allow them to be who they are?
I'm so glad you're bringing that up because so much of my core is about this because we have no control of the future, nor do we know what the future has in store for us. So at that time of that diagnosis, we were devastated. I mean, really, what we were thinking was, what's going to become of this child? As a mom, I would tell you, I don't regret when I saw the red flags asking for help, but I didn't stop finding what worked for my son. And I used whatever was told to me just as information, not as a definition of my son's future. Because the truth is, how can I throw this blanket over my son and say, this is your future? This is what's going to happen to you. I'm kind of glad that I listened to that wisdom inside of me, even though I do think I worry too much because we got to
Mhm.
enjoy our kids, whether they have a label or not. Our kids are with us for such a short amount of time. My youngest is 22 now. He's out of the house. I'm an empty nester. I'm like, where has the time come? If there's anything I could think I want to go back, is I want to snuggle a little longer. We can be late for school today. Let's stay up tonight and watch a movie. I mean, let's talk a little longer. I would make more time to just enjoy the kids and not worry so much.
I love that wisdom, because we as women especially have got into the hustle game. It came
Yeah.
with the playbook, and we do have this really unique ability to not do that.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, it'll go by, it'll be gone, and that snuggle time will be over, and all of that connection will dissipate. It'll reformulate in another way. What I love about Jules is he did not allow you to stay in that. He brought joy to everything. So I want you to
Everything.
take us down this storyline of where you were when you learned about his diagnosis and all of the things that he embodied. Because this to me is just the most beautiful story of how we can all use that joy that he exuded everywhere. to bring that joy into our own lives, because we don't have to be anybody but ourselves. Jules was just himself, but that joy is something that we can all practice in our own lives. So tell us the story, because it is pretty remarkable.
So, Debbie, it's funny because we have challenges in life and we think, wow, once I get through this challenge, I'm going to have everything under control, right? Once this is over, and that's not life. Life is constantly sending you challenges and tests. And sometimes, I mean, for my challenges, I would sometimes meet someone and you'd hear, oh, this person had gone through X, Y, Z. Or even when I was younger, I remember had the opportunity to meet a Holocaust survivor, just thinking to myself, how can this person even be standing? This person had lost their entire family, come to the United States as a child, been adopted. I remember it clearly in my mind. I was in elementary school and just thinking, I could never live through that. I would be. So fast forward, I'm a mother of 3 boys, and it's a busy house. I'm a working mom. I was also caretaking for my mom. Normal life, right, Debbie? The things we do as adults. Julian was in high school. He was thriving at his school. The new school year had started, and Julian had started football, and he started complaining of pain. And so he's tackled football. It's normal growing pains. We had completely ignored the signs that there was anything. Why should we think there was anything more than growing pains or a tackle or a ligament? And I had taken him for his physical for the beginning of the year. Everything was clear. I took him one day to urgent care just for a quick x-ray. I'm like, maybe nothing, everything was clear. He turned 16. He's complaining of pain. And about a week before Thanksgiving, I had enough. I'm like, I'm going to go to the ER tonight. It was a Sunday night, I remember. And I took him to the ER. And it was incredible. That night at that ER, it was so quiet. Nobody was there. They listened to me. They're like, okay, x-ray's already been done. I go, I think we need a scan or something. And I'm thinking still, pulled ligament. You can't see that in x-ray. A tendon. And Debbie, within an hour, they brought out the scan, and I was by myself. I had not thought to call his dad. I had thought to call anybody because I thought this was just for me to settle myself. He was okay. I had given him an Advil. He was feeling okay. And the ER doctor came in and said, there's something very suspicious. We think in their language, it's a neoplasm. We need to have him immediately taken to the children's hospital so pediatric oncologists can look at him. And I stopped understanding the English language. I could not even begin to understand. Of course, I call his father immediately, put him on the phone. He starts arguing also on the phone with the doctor because he can't understand what he's hearing. No one's expecting this. And by the next day, my son at the age of 16 had received the diagnosis of Ewing sarcoma, which is a cancer of the bones that many young men and teenagers and young children get. It's specifically a pediatric cancer. Yeah. And I thought I had been disappointed before, but I didn't even understand this. And then just, of course, recalling everything that had happened the previous couple of months. As a parent, we're so hard on ourselves. The next morning when the oncologist came in, they told us he needed to have surgery. We rushed him into surgery. Everything was confirmed. And when we told Julian and his brothers, Julian kind of received it because I don't think he really understood what was going on. And in his limited language, and even his brother's limited language, I think it was, okay, this is just the next step. And so I let him lead the way for us. Instead of myself becoming overwhelmed with the big picture, okay, we're going to take this in next steps. We're going to go to the next surgery. And he started saying something that was incredible. He started telling his mom, they got to take out the kryptonite because the kryptonite's going to kill Superman. So they got to take out the kryptonite. And I was just like, first clue that this child was turning around an incredibly scary situation and empowering himself, right?
Yeah.
And so we have the surgery, and he's like, Mom, did they take out all the kryptonite? And I go, babe, I think there's still a little bit more. And they had told us we would have to go to Texas for another surgery. And so we flew out of Texas, and my son started putting himself on social media, telling his friends everything that was going on, as if there was no filter. There was no, as a mother, I'm like, our privacy. And we have an amazing community here in Miami. People were so receptive, even total strangers, and just giving him like a thumbs up, you're going to be okay, right? And so this only fueled him more. And we got to Texas. He started telling me, Mom, don't you worry, because I'm going to heal like the Wolverine. And so I was like, and he would laugh. And he was laughing because it was kind of silly. He knew the Wolverine wasn't real, but he was, again, empowering himself again with these superpowers, right? Like, I'm going to heal like the Wolverine. And I'm going to tell you, we were in the Texas hospital. Every nurse fell in love with him. Every doctor fell in love with him. He got up the next day from his surgery, walked around. Everyone was so impressed. He would say, well, of course, because I'm like the Wolverine. I'm healing like the Wolverine. And he owned it, Debbie. I mean, to this point, his father and I are looking at each other. I'm like, I think he really believes he's going to heal like the Wolverine. So about a month later, this is where things start happening, where you're just like, if you're not a faithful person, you're going to miss it.
Yeah.
A month later, we're invited by a pediatric cancer. It's these parents that lost their daughter, Bella, years before, and they had created this nonprofit, and they had a 5K, the superhero 5K. And so they invited us to participate, to form a team, and I'm sitting with Julian. And Julian's like busy with his social media. He's too busy for cancer. He's too busy for his kryptonite. He stands in the mirror every day saying, the kryptonite is not going to come back. We've got this. So I'm like, Julian, we're going to go to a walk. All our friends are going to join us. We have a team. What should we call our team? It's like, Mom, I'm Super Jules. This is Team Super Jules. And Debbie, like, okay, we're Team Super Jules. And from that day, my son's life ended 12 months later, almost to the day of that walk. And my son manifested the last year of his life in a way that I can't even tell you the opportunities that he received. We had people coming up to us, perfect strangers, visiting us in the hospital, bringing him gifts, coming up and introducing. I mean, we live in Miami. We do not live in a small town. Yeah. It was almost, we say we live for a purpose. I remember when my son was very young, my very best friend in the whole wide world, she's an incredibly faithful woman. I remember calling her and telling her name is Christy. I go, Christy, I'm getting this diagnosis for Julian. I just don't know what to do. And she's like, but Sara, Julian is perfect. He's born with his purpose. You just haven't seen it yet. And in my fear of the future and what's going to happen, I hadn't seen it, but right before my eyes, my son was manifesting his purpose, this light, this joy. And so to give you an example of one of the experiences he manifested, he was invited by the same organization of the superhero race. They have a gala every year, and they asked him to receive an award for the superhero of the year. And again, Debbie, this is a boy that I was told was going to be nonverbal. This was a boy that maybe if you heard him speak, even though he had this big, strong body of a 16-year-old, his speech was that of maybe someone in 3rd or 4th grade. Well, when I told him that he was going to get the superhero award, he's like, Mom, I'm going to give a speech. And I'm like, well, you do have to say thank you. And I'm a typical mom. My son got on that stage and spoke so articulately. It was maybe over 1,000 people in the audience. He gave the most beautiful speech. He acknowledged not only the family and Bella, but everyone at the hospital. And he talked about his experience. He even talked about the terrible hospital food. I mean, he really put into such a beautiful, cohesive, emotional speech his experience and how grateful he was. And then he called himself Super Jules to everyone. Like, he wasn't Julian, he was Super Jules receiving this award. And by the end of the night, Debbie, he had the entire crowd dancing all night long. People coming up to him, wanting to take pictures. The whole Marlins team, our baseball team here in Miami, was there. They were all wanting to take pictures of my son, as if my son had been the star player. And my son felt completely comfortable with the entire situation. It was really phenomenal. And at that moment, when I was in the audience, I could not believe my eyes what was happening. And I remembered as a child, my Julian would tell me, Mom, one day I'm going to be famous. And I would be like, yes, of course. Yes, honey. And I stood there in the audience saying, oh my gosh, I think my son is famous. I think he's made this happen for himself. And so from that evening, other great opportunities came. People would reach out to him and ask him what he wanted, and they grant his wishes. The Make-A-Wish Foundation sent him to Comic-Con, and they asked him if he wanted to meet a famous person. He asked to meet the stars of Teen Wolf. So we went out to lunch, and there were the 3 stars of Teen Wolf, and he sat at the table talking to them for like 2 hours, and they were so wonderful to him. He dressed up like Superman, because we're at Comic-Con, as Super Jules. They're expecting Super Jules. Teen Wolf is coming to meet Super Jules. And those 3 kids, I remember, was Tyler Posey, Dylan O'Brien, and another young man. And they just talked it up with him. And I, again, sat there in amazement that my autistic child, at one point, he only had autistic friends, sitting here at a table at Comic-Con, and they were not just indulging him, they were enjoying his presence, to the point that afterwards they would FaceTime with him and check up on him even after that meeting. Debbie, what kindness, what generosity from people to make my son important in their lives that way. But then his magic to want people to be that way with him, even in the middle of chemotherapy, radiation, sleepless nights at the hospital, throwing up, bad reactions, you name it, because it was as if we were living 2 parallel lives. There was, I got to go to the hospital, I got to do the chemo, I got to get the transfusion, and he did it like a soldier. He never complained. Maybe he did, but there was so much more sunshine that he showed us, that he himself, I think, gave himself like an anesthesia, right, to what he was experiencing. I mean, even as his mother, even I held him in my stomach for 9 months. I gave him life, and I did not understand what I was seeing. As personal as your child can be to me, your child becomes who they are meant to become, and he just became really a superpower. And it felt like it was never going to end, because the good times just kept coming and coming, and he just kept wishing and manifesting. He even being granted by the city of Miami being chief of police for the day. I mean, the list goes on and on of the things my son got to do, to the point that it was like, Julian, there were things we had to say no to, because he would be in the middle of chemotherapy, or we would have to do radiation, and we just couldn't travel, or we just couldn't do that thing. But looking back, Debbie, I almost think, like, what was I thinking? What was going to happen was going to happen. What was going to happen was that finally the cancer kept coming back, and it kept coming back, and it kept coming back, and the kryptonite kept showing up. And he finally passed. He passed in February of 2016. He passed at home. Our house was full of people. It was not even a normal passing, because even that morning he asked me, Mom, who's going to come and visit me? Who's coming over? I mean, this kid was on painkillers. He had oxycodone patches, 2 of them on his back just to control the bone pain. And he was still preoccupied with who was coming over. His room was full of people, our whole family, our friends, as he wanted. I think that if I would have imagined the last day of my son's life, I would have thought we would be alone, quietly praying. But no, that's not how Julian set it up. Yeah, the room was full. I think there were like 20 people in the room, and he was really with it to the very end. And it was a beautiful day. He passed around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and even the time of his passing was quite remarkable. And when he passed, it's almost like he also went through me at the time. And instead of being filled with incredible sadness, sometimes I look back at that moment. I don't know if it was the adrenaline of the shock, but it was almost like a release. Like he was finally really free, freer than he had ever been. Like his soul just flew.
Yeah.
Like Super Jules was always meant to fly, right? Yeah. And he left all of us better than we were. That was my Jules.
So what is that? What legacy has he left on your life that you are now doing your work to bring this forward?
Well, it's been 10 years since Julian passed. This is the 10th year, 2026. Grief is a hard thing because it does funny things to your mind. I think what happened to me personally is that at some point with the sadness, the darkness, I just kept feeling like this isn't where Julian would want me to stay. That's not what he was about. He wasn't a child who naturally even felt sorry for himself. That wasn't where he leaned. He wasn't the kind of kid that moped around. That wasn't his personality. So whenever I gave into that, and like I said, it's been 10 years, I couldn't stay there very long because I felt like he was calling me. I also had 2 other boys who I knew he would not want that for. He would not want me to just ignore his brothers. I had my mother, and I was blessed with amazing, strong mother who, my mom had MS, and she was a woman who did not give in lightly to her challenge. There was a lot of swinging the pendulum, going from the sadness to the light, the sadness to the light. And then I just started carrying the grief differently. And it always went back to him, to remembering the way he was dealing with his pain, the way he was reinterpreting the challenge. And little by little, I felt like I was adopting these little things through the years and becoming stronger. You know, what also happened to me is that I also started feeling like I didn't have time for the BS. I no longer cared about things that I cared about before. And I was a lot more patient with people and softer with people. And I allowed myself to be more vulnerable with people. And when I did that, I found that people in general are really good. And when you show them that, they give that back to you. Debbie, I did the work. I did go to therapy. I read the books because it's a climb. We don't get better. It's like going to the gym. You know, when we're hit with a tragedy, with trauma, we're not going to get okay laying on the sofa. Nope. We need to do the work. We need to do the spiritual work. We need to do the emotional work. And we need to be uncomfortable. Because just this Sunday, we had the Live Like Bella walk. 10 years since Julian walked his last walk. And I made a decision in the new year that in this 10th year since Julian's passing, I was going to remember Julian. I was going to talk about him. I was going to tell his story. And so we got moments of inspiration. I was feeling really good on January 1st with that promise. And I got to tell you, the Saturday before the walk, I wanted to be sick. My stomach hurt. We had t-shirts. I procrastinated looking at the t-shirts, and there was something inside of me that did not want to go. And thanks to my family and my friends, we made it that morning, and it was a glorious day. People still remember my son 10 years later. They come up to me to tell me, oh my God, I remember Super Jules. He was amazing. And this organization, they give out a Super Jules award every year in my son's name. I'm feeling Julian. I'm feeling him. And I got on stage and I talked about Julian, and people are applauding. And I'm thinking to myself, we got to get sometimes past the discomfort, because on the other side of that pain, we're finding our purpose. And I feel very strongly that to work with other moms that are, whether the diagnosis is cancer, whether the diagnosis is autism, whether the diagnosis is that your child has temper tantrums, I feel a calling to help, to be an ear, to be an objective ear of love and patience, and to kind of say, you don't have to have it figured out. Yeah. You don't have to have, I didn't have to know what future was. Yeah. That was going to unfold on its own. And I had no control over it at the end, but I did have control over the way I was living now. And now that Julian is gone, I don't know what my life has at the end, but I feel like I have some work to do. And that will also unfold the way Julian's life unfolded.
I think that's such a beautiful story because it has so much meatiness to it that, first of all, there's Julian's story, there's your story, there's the grief story, there's the mom story, and you have so much to share. And almost this 10 years has been an incubation period for you to say, I'm ready to tell that story, because it is a full arc story. It isn't just one blip in time. And I shared with you when we were doing our call together that I could see you creating, whether it be a book or a children's book about Super Jules, because he's left you with such a beautiful legacy, literally, for us as a planet to look at his life and say, that is a model for living. And I know that because your joy comes out when you speak about him, but I know that your joy was also a model for him. I cannot not believe that you, no matter all the stuff that goes on, because we as women have all this crap going on in our heads, but the fact is that you still were just there being present for him and for your other children and for your mom. And I think that that's one of the biggest legacies that you are leaving, is that you are present. I feel that it's time for you to now tell a bigger story, not just your story, not just Jules's story, but a bigger story. I don't usually share these kind of things on this podcast. I'm just listening, but I just love your energy so much because it's such a light in the world. And I don't know that you know that, but it is Jules. He's part of your light, but you are light yourself. And I love that you have that light to give to all of us. So, what do you see on your horizon?
Well, I was so struck when you invited me to come and speak with you. And I really listened to you the first time we spoke, because we have a little voice inside us. And sometimes we temper it down because we're like, no, 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 that's too much. Why do we do that? Right? I feel just like I'm in the right place when I talk about it. And I have started writing a book about Julian. So I feel so called to that. And when I'm doing that, when I'm writing, when I'm talking to you, so I do also a little life coaching on the side. and it started with grief counseling. I feel this beautiful energy within me because what's also developed, and I feel like I could say I've always been a spiritual person, but what this really has done for me spiritually is it's about staying open and trusting the unknown, right? Trusting that there's something bigger than me here and that I need to follow that. It's like sometimes God taps you on the shoulder and you don't listen. And then he nudges you on the shoulder. But that's his purpose. Like, I put you here to do something. This has all been happening for your benefit. Let's get on with it. And so, and that's the other thing that's coming to the surface. So, yes, I am working on a book about Super Jules, working with women through grief, and that includes divorce, because I went through a hard divorce, a heartbreaking divorce as well. I had to caretake for my mom. She just passed away last year, which was a really big part of my road here to where I am today. And yeah, that's what I'm working on now. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah. So I just want to share a little bit of my own experience because I'm a little extra. And so when I was going through cancer treatment, my surgeon said to me during one of our sessions, I feel like I have to temper your optimism and enthusiasm. She said that to me. And
Oh my
but it
God.
just reminds me that I resonate with you because you have that optimistic and that joyful energy. And so that's what people are drawn to with you, Sara. And I want you to know that that's what draws people to you. And so all of your contact information will be in the show notes. And I encourage any woman that's even remotely feeling this sense of, I don't know what to do with my children or with a diagnosis or with the grief or divorce or a parent, because it's so important to have a connection with somebody that's already walked the path. I can't stress that enough. And you have walked it with grace and dignity and absolute love and joy. And so that is the energy that I know you have brought to this beautiful podcast today. And I am so honored that my audience gets to experience you because you are really a magical being. And I know that the universe is just unfolding for you. God is just saying, like you said, tapping you on the shoulder and saying, it's your time to be in the visibility of the world, because Jules was a great role model for that. So I always ask my guests during 2026, what is the best wisdom of all the things that you've gone through that you would share with a woman that's on planet Earth today in 2026? What is the best wisdom that you can share with her? Just a little tidbit of grand.
Just, I guess since I'm in this realm right now that I'm trying to create something new, I'm trying to create something outside of my career, outside of what is safe, right? I would say listen to your intuition. Listen to your inner voice. She's saying something to you. And regardless of what you've been through,
Mhm.
turning that wisdom, turning that pain, it's going to lead you into your purpose. It's going to be hard. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to bring up all the things you've been avoiding, but it's you. It's you. You run towards her. Run towards her because she's waiting for you.
Yeah. Beautiful. What a great note to end on. So, once again, Sara, thank you so much for being my guest today. And I will catch up with you in a couple of months because I'm excited to see what's unfolding for this beautiful
Sounds good, Debbie.
energy.
Thank you.
Mwah. Thank you.